want to thank you for joining us today here at We want to thank you for joining us today here at... Oh, shut up. I'm going to get it. We want to thank you here for joining us today here. So, moving on to our other... to our next... what the hell is this shit again? Moving on to our next... what? As well as the entered... as well as... so that we... Do you think I could do radio?
You had the face for it.
Oh, God, I hate you.
What's new?
Because I need therapy.
Can you tell the difference in the quality of the video?
Unfortunately, yes, you can see your face clear.
What are you doing?
I am standing because I am getting swamp ass.
Dude, the one cheek sneak doesn't work when everybody's staring at you. Did you not notice I increased the size significantly?
No,
oh my goodness.
I'm also dyslexic, Gert.
What?
In.
The system is down. If you have any feedback, other tips and tricks, or comics you'd like to discuss, please send them to us.
To the end yet. Every story needs a villain. Do you ensure that they aren't all the same? Let's talk about simple techniques to ensure villainous variety in your Dungeons & Dragons game. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
And I'm your co-host, Brandon.
Here, we hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure. I am super excited for today's main topic, villains variety, because it's easy to create a monster that has stats and different abilities and minions. But what really drives them is their motives, their personalities, all those sorts of things that makes them different, right?
Yeah.
You can literally, if you do it right, you can have a goblin boss as the villain for the first adventure, then the second adventure, then the third adventure. And if you do it right, they're all different enough that the players don't care it's the same monster. And that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So, villains in every story, we all know that they need one. And, of course, the Heroes in Dungeons & Dragons campaign are likely to face dozens of villains before the campaign ends its course, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, now some stories have, the big bad villain, right? But in most cases, there's multiple smaller villains throughout the process as well, right? So, coming up with many memorable villains can be a challenge, right? Especially for any DM's imagination, because there should be more to them than just their abilities, right? So to help with that, we're going to discuss a short list of villainous attributes and characteristics to keep in mind when developing your villains, right?
Yep. And this is a condensed version, mind you. But,
Yes.
So there's other options. But this is a good point to start as any.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this it was an article from the Dragon Magazine 429 by Steve Winter, and was really, really well done. If you haven't checked those out, you can find them on Drive-Thru-RPG and pick them up. They're really good stuff. So the purpose of this list is not to roll out a ready-to-play villain, right?
Quite the opposite, actually.
Though you can do that with these if you want. They instead can kind of steer your creativity onto the pathways that you probably wouldn't take otherwise. And that's kind of the goal that we want to discuss here. And so we all tend to fall into patterns. Do you guys have a particular pattern of villains that you use?
I use kobolds a lot.
The cackling maniacal villain.
Like villain, okay, cackling villain. What about you? Like for me, I have this thing where I do the simple, the simple evil guy that's just kind of crazy. That's kind of unfortunately the typical one I fall into.
Good job, boss. But I don't want to feel good. I want to feel evil.
So I don't know about you, but I fall into the same pattern. So this short list will hopefully help us kind of evaluate. Yeah, it did. It's just a big list and we read a lot. All right. So our D&D villains come in 3 basic flavors. We're gonna start just by 3 simple flavors.
Chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry.
Yes, basically, right? But what's interesting is when you mix them in and get swirl, right? That's what we want to focus on today. The first two are typically pretty universal, regardless of the medium that you're in, right? But the third is typically only found in fantasy and make-believe settings, right?
Yep.
Though it is worth noting that at some point, you do need to decide which type of villain you're dealing with, and including a range band of these different personalities is really good too. That might happen at the beginning of the story, during the design, which honestly never happens with me, but I just kind of I play it up based on the responses of the players and how the characters react. Or you might make it up in the middle or at the end at the very last moment, and that's okay. But the sooner you have this better fleshed out,
The better.
the easier it is you're going to be able to design your stories and stuff around it. So the first one that we want to talk about, the first characteristic, is conflicting goals.
Yeah.
This is a big one, right?
Yep. In this case, the villain here is not necessarily somebody who is evil,
Right.
but their goals or views may conflict with those of the players or society at large.
Absolutely. I think that that's a really good point. And there's a lot of good real life comparisons for this.
Yep.
I'm immediately drawn to flat earthers,
Yep.
right? The earth is flat, despite what everyone else tells them. So to me, that's a villain. Okay, maybe let's talk about Copernicus instead. Maybe that's a little more
Relevant?
more relevant, right? For example, to be a hero showing the brutal truth in his era, where he's saying, guess what, everyone? We're not the center of the universe. But when the religious are in charge, he becomes kind of the villain by revealing a truth. Now, is he bad?
Nope.
No.
Not particularly. He just is like, hey, you're wrong. And I think that can make for a really great villain. Someone who is trying to challenge the status quo in a scenario. Can you guys think of any characters from your favorite anime or movies that kind of fall into this trope?
Well, I just finished watching Breaking Bad, so Walter White comes
Okay.
to mind immediately.
Do you want to expand upon that
Yep.
for those that haven't actually seen that?
Who hasn't
Spoiler
seen Breaking
alert.
Bad?
Well,
I
in a
haven't.
nutshell, the main character discovers in the first episode that he has cancer, has a dead-end job, and is unemployed. And he realized, oh crap, this cancer treatment is expensive. We don't have that kind of money, and I'm probably not going to survive. I want my family to survive. So he basically started cooking meth so he can make money so his kids can go to college and to pay for his medical treatment. And it just escalates from there.
And so you don't think that he's a bad guy. He's
That-
just trying to break the norms to
He doesn't start as a bad guy. That was not how he intended to start.
just trying to pay for his kids, right? And it
Yep.
kind of just snowballed from there.
Oh yeah.
And that's a really good example of the three different ranges,
the
right?
Yeah.
At the beginning, he isn't intent on being a. Sorry, I'm poking my fingers. At the beginning, he's not actually intent on being some evil mastermind, right?
But he sort of becomes one.
But he slowly becomes one. So he goes from this person with good intentions, albeit not a great direction,
To I am God.
right, to this
Yep.
very
God complex real quick.
terrible kind of persona.
I'm the one that
Um,
knocks.
Yes, and if you're in the audience and you're on are following us on YouTube or whatever, enter in the comments or what are some of your favorite villains that might fall under this conflicting goals, where they're not bad, they're just their goals don't align with the norm. Do you have any ideas?
I have an extremely good example.
Okay, let's hear it.
The primary antagonist from Fable 3, your brother.
Did people actually play Fable 3? After 2, it kind of
He
just
did.
went downhill.
Ever play Fable? Okay, so you have a tyrannical leader. He's a king, and he's punishing everyone like with an iron fist and ruling with an
Mhm.
iron fist. But there's a reason for that. After you do this rebellion and you overthrow his ass, you kind of choose to like execute him or to let him live, just like throw him in the prisons and stuff. Fuck yeah, Fable 3 was great. See that?
You're wrong.
And
Andrew.
I was talking about the comment before that.
Oh,
what?
specifically her people?
He wants to be in the middle to balance out the hair situation.
Oh, fair enough. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. Once you take the throne from him, you start going through his stuff, and you find out that he's been taxing or doing super high taxations because he needs a specific amount of money to raise this army to fight this horrifying evil on the other side of the ocean that's slowly coming to your continent. And you're like, oh, shit. Well, we need to do something, but we can't just do what he was doing. There's got to be another way to raise this money without alarming the populace.
That's a really good example.
And we must point out that in Fable 3, your butler's voiced by John Cleese, just saying.
What?
So this is an interesting one because there's so many different ways you can go about it. And for me, these are my favorite kinds of villains because they are relatable. At some point, the players will be like, you know what? This makes sense.
Yep.
You know, but maybe the way they're going about it's wrong. I think Thanos is a good example. In his eyes, he's trying to help the universe before he snaps everyone away. The goal is if we don't, we're going to get rid of all of our resources. But instead of, just tripling, quadrupling the resources, he's just like, let's get rid of half the people. So you can kind of understand why he's doing it. The issue is the approach that he's taking makes him against everybody else.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about some of the villains from Babylon 5. Like, I forget, it's been so long since I watched it, I forget what the race was called, but they occasionally, they appeared and they started destroying, like, entire civilizations. And the main character eventually managed to confront them, like, why are you doing this? To build up the universe. We're trying to weed out which races are weak.
Mm-hmm.
And to give, like, opposition to those that are still there so they can build themselves up, because otherwise you're in a time of peace, you can become complacent, you become weak. We're trying to keep you all strong for what's to come.
That's interesting. I like that.
Where's that from?
Babylon
Babylon.
5.
Oh, right.
Ed McIntosh mentions that 3E allowed creatures to grow in power or in size. I think that's a really interesting thing for these sorts of scenarios. So if you've got the character who, like Thanos, starts off at a weaker kind of level, right? And as he collects these things to help him achieve his goal, he's becoming stronger. So the longer it takes the players to catch him or the characters to catch him or to get involved, the stronger he becomes, the bigger the challenge that the characters have to overcome. So I think that's a really good core aspect when it comes to designing a villain. The motivation of
What's his name?
what's that?
Halo. Not Chief, not Arbiter. The stupid little robot eye that floats around.
Oh,
I can't remember his name.
and I feel sad about it.
The Spark guy?
Yeah.
The
Guilty Spark.
Guilty
Guilty
Spark.
Spark.
Guilty.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think he would kind of lay in the same spot as he's trying to activate the Halo for a good purpose, but
To purge the
to everyone
blood.
else, it's not a good thing.
Right. 343 Guilty Spark at your service. Yeah, so that's a really good one. And there's a lot of characters. And honestly, once again, for my perspective, this is the most versatile of the three choices. Because in Thanos' case, it's murder, right? He's trying to just kill a bunch of
Genocide.
people. Yeah, right?
Yep.
In your example, Breaking Bad, what's the guy's name?
Walter White.
Walter White. He's murdering a few people as he progresses. He doesn't go out with that intent. Oh. Me or no?
Mine, apparently.
And so
It was an improvement.
and that so there's a huge range there of their villainy, right? And the way it's perceived.
Yep.
And I think that as DMs we can leverage that. Because when you get to that situation, you can ask yourself, how far is this character willing to go? I want to share one of my personal favorites that fall in line with this. And I know everyone's going to hate on me. But in Batman and Robin, with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, is the perfect... You better move the mic farther away than that. Is the perfect example. Because he's a doctor trying to help people when he starts. And then his wife gets this affliction that he has to put her in the cryogenically freeze her until he can find a cure. But guess what? That costs money.
Yep.
And guess what he doesn't have? Money.
Yep.
So everything he's doing is to save somebody's life. Which, if you think about it, anybody else that gets that disease, if he finds the cure, life will be saved.
Yep.
But in the meantime, he's robbing banks.
Yep.
And fighting Batman. So, from a villain perspective, do you think he's a bad guy?
He doesn't want to be.
Right. It's just kind of the direction he flew, kind of like Walter White, right?
Yep.
So, all right, that'll do it for our first one.
My neighbor makes this really good rock candy in his basement.
Oh no, I made it. Sorry, go back up. That was my bad. I didn't mean to do that. I was laughing.
You need the light thing.
So, yeah, right. So the next we want to talk about is hunger. And hunger is an interesting one because this type is a little bit more evil and a little less redeemable than the first, but is still recognizably one of the people, right?
Yep.
One of the characters, right?
Yep.
Though the hunger could drive an innocent person to do something they wouldn't normally do. And I think there's a really great example of this in the D&D lore. I think werewolves are a great example of this.
Well, it depends on which edition you go off of. But
I
yeah.
think, well, in general, somebody might be a good farmer and get transformed and then become a savage beast that's attacking because of the thirst of hunger to devour flesh. Same thing with vampires, right?
Can you imagine daylight comes, he transforms back, and like, oh man, not again.
Right. And I think that this is a good one because it's not just a thirst for blood like that.
Yep.
What are some other examples? What are some hungers that can drive a
Pretty
other?
sure vampirism isn't.
Especially if somebody doesn't become a vampire or a werewolf by choice.
Right. It specifically would be one that's converted, not one of the born, right?
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying is your villain can start as somebody normal who is then afflicted by a hunger, whether it's a hunger for blood like a
I
vampire.
think illithids would be a good example of that.
Yes.
Yes, mind flayers would be a good example because they're created by the seeds getting put into the person,
Yep.
and then they grow inside of
Yeah,
the
the
innocent
little
and become a mind flayer.
wormy things.
Now, in that case, I would say that
And the original person is long gone.
yeah,
at that
I would
point.
say at that point the person is long gone. But if somebody's got something in their eye, let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. If you've not played the early access, it's really good. In that situation, your characters all have this affliction. They are going to turn into mind flayers, and they're doing whatever they can to
Yep.
try to survive and find a way to undo it.
By the way, if you haven't seen the commercial for that or the trailer for it,
Which one?
it's squeamish.
Oh yeah.
I watch
Body
it and I go, ugh.
There was some body horror there. And not to mention, full illithids, well, they gotta feast on the brains of sentient creatures to survive.
Yeah, and that's not their fault that hunger is there.
But you can't really blame anybody wanting to purge them just for that either.
Right, but once again, that becomes an understanding thing, right?
Right.
You have a situation. Glad.
Zooland. Just saying.
Yeah.
It's
So
their first time seeing this ad.
oh, Zooland. Zulandi says that the whole thing feels very relaxed and appealing.
That's
so
it.
whoever designed our new set did an excellent job in our opinion. Thanks to Casey, he did phenomenal. We agree. I like this format a lot better. I don't know how they feel about it.
It's really pretty. It's very laid back.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting. I like
That's
that.
a great way of telling yourself.
So, I lost my train of thought, so I'm going to get up on this.
That's
where,
not hard.
damn it, dude. Andrew says in the Dresden Files, there's a white court vampire who fights against his hunger and tries to live as a human and not as a vampire.
Oh, yeah.
There's a very popular Marvel character that's like this too.
A few, actually.
Well, I'm thinking Blade specifically, right?
Yeah, he uses a serum to cut back on his thirst.
Yeah, it's supposed to help reduce his thirst. But so this is a really great example because these people or these creatures aren't necessarily inherently evil. They kind of slowly turn into
they
it
just
because
have to
of
be.
something that's happened to them. And I think those are the best because think of the time constraint. Let's say a person is bitten by a vampire. And, the players, they're having violent tendencies and they are becoming more aggressive slowly, and the characters stumble across this. That first the butcher got bit, so now he's eating all of his raw meat. And the characters use their skills or resources to determine that, he's becoming a vampire.
Yep.
You now have 48 hours to find a cure before he ends. So now if you fail, you are the reason this person has become like the way they are. Not the initial reason, but your failure. That is such a better storyline, don't you think?
Definitely.
What are some other ideas of hunger that really can drive home this sort of point?
It's right there, but it doesn't.
Yeah, graboids, always hungry but never satisfied.
Okay, we're talking sentient creatures here.
Oh, damn.
So at some point, these characters that have this hunger are forced to sate that hunger no matter what the cost. And this is irrevocably going to be a path to evil. Clearly, something is wrong with these villains. They make choices that no normal person would make, but they don't have a choice. If I don't suck the blood of the people, I die.
Yep.
And what is the strongest emotion?
Love.
Oh,
No, you're wrong. Stop watching Sailor Moon.
hunger.
Eat my ass.
Survival.
Oh.
Survival is one
Okay.
of the strongest emotions a person can have.
Yep.
Leisha's giving me the
Yeah,
stink eye
she
because I
is.
said it.
Love is best notion. No, it's not. Yeah,
So, and I think that's another really good one is Imhotep, right? Imhotep starts off as just somebody who lost his love and wants to resurrect her, and then it comes down to sacrificing people to get what he wants, which is bad.
Yeah, because the ritual involves him like feeding on the very people who resed him, so he could restore his body back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew. I actually have a player that's using the Dampier,
Mm-hmm.
Altered Race or whatever it is, and I'm having them doing that daily. Every time they do a long rest, like, okay, roll a d6, find out what you're craving for the day.
Oh, I love that. That is so good.
And if they can't get to it, they turn on their friends.
And I think that that's a really good way to have a villain created during your game too, right? Where the person wants to play that Dampier, and maybe sometimes they lose control, and for one night they become the villain.
The other players are kind of paranoid.
And it doesn't have to be about them trying to kill the other player, but just trying to restrain and control them, right?
Yep.
All right, Brandon, do you want to tell us about the third one up there?
Pure, concentrated evil.
Oh, come on, is that the best you can do?
Because I'm doing a Skeletor laugh.
That's all right. Come back next week for more words from Skeletor. All right, Brandon, pure concentrated evil. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Illegal for a fine is legal for a price.
Well,
okay, so pure concentrated evil. This mode isn't quite unique to what?
that's true.
Isn't unique to fantasy. Pure unimaginable evil.
Yep.
I gave you one job.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been distracted this week.
So, in most fantasy settings, absolutely evil is real.
Oh yeah.
Evil is not just an ethical notion. It has arms and legs and eyes and ears, and it walks and it eats, and it gets wet when it rains, much like anyone else. In a setting like D&D, some villains willingly choose the path of evil. What are some really good examples?
Joker.
I was gonna say Joker.
Okay,
I
so
said that
he chose the path of evil, right?
Yep.
I was actually thinking within the D&D setting. There's one that's really popular that sticks out
Strahd?
really well.
Slods, yeah.
Strahd. That's what I said.
Well, I was thinking liches.
Oh,
Liches are mages who want to live forever and gain nothing but more power.
Yep.
is that evil or just being greedy?
Well, no, that's pure evil. You have to you have to make sacrifices to become a lich. Part of the process is to like sacrifice like a city type of area. I forget what they call the area of the ground where they desecrate it, but basically it's a lot like in what is that
Sorcerer's
anime?
Full Metal
where
Alchemist?
Yes,
Yeah,
Full Metal
Sorcerer's
Alchemist,
Stone.
where they're trying to make the Philosopher's Stone,
That's
and they
what it
got to
was.
sacrifice thousands and thousands of people to do it.
Yep.
So somebody's mentioning Sephiroth up there. I definitely like that, but I think he would fall more under the becoming evil instead of starting evil path, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because he's trying to just rewrite the future. And I think in this example, we see a lot of this in D&D, but I still think what?
That's fucking evil.
What's that?
Delcinia. Then make their family or murder their family to save the world.
Oh God, that's brutal. But is it evil? The life of a few for the many? I would argue that's not evil.
If the big bad
That's
came
self-
by and said, "Hey,
that's
kill your family,
self-sacrifice.
kill your family members, or I'm going to destroy the world," that's pretty evil
Yep.
of him. The person doing it, that's not their doing.
Right. That I think that,
That
would be
falls
a,
under category 1.
yeah. Right.
Category 3 is the guy making him do it.
Yes. And so when it comes to villains and their evil nature, I think that this is something that we can kind of touch on a little more. These are creatures that are born bad or choose to be. They're naturally sadistic, man-eating, soul-devouring, evil-worshipping nightmares. Maybe they're human, maybe they're something else, right? In D&D, they're all varieties of creatures. So
That's just something how orcs were in earlier editions because they were really built that way by their god.
yeah, and see that's something that's changed a lot in recent D&D, right?
Yeah.
Where which is weird because I always felt myself that I had the ability to change their alignment if I chose to.
Yeah.
So apparently that needs to be written in now. And I've done that with a bunch of the monsters we've written for our show.
My brother-in-law keeps saying, actually, there's something that's inherently evil. Is chromatic dragons.
Yep.
Yeah, they're born that way.
Yeah, and my brother's like, well, what if I get a black dragon egg, but I raise it to be good? Is it still going to be good? I was
Until
like,
it eats
know,
you.
unless it's got like that instinct to become evil.
How about you wait a few hundred years and find out?
I don't think so. But yeah, that's the thing. That's going into that they're raised that way, not they're born that way.
Yeah. Nature versus nurture.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. Now when we're building these characters, remember we said maybe they're human, maybe they're not. It's our goal to keep in mind that they're supposed to be, much worse. Unlike other villains in the other categories, DMs shouldn't feel any pressure to humanize this villain, right? They're monsters, and it should be fueling the players. It shouldn't be fueling the players' empathy towards them. They should be like, this person's bad. They got to go.
Yep.
Let's deal with it. Those are some of the good intro adventures to run, I think.
Kind of like the creature from The Thing.
I've not seen the thing.
I also read the but you know the basic premise, though, right? They find this alien creature that basically absorbs other living creatures and can imitate them.
Is that called Mimic?
That is a show, but I don't think that's what he's talking about.
No.
That was a good movie.
So that's a. But is that really an evil creature? That's not evil, though, right?
While considering it's surviving by literally absorbing other living creatures, including humans.
Right, but if it's born that way, doesn't make it
Yep.
evil. It just means that's its nature.
Well, it's heavily implied that it's a existence that's so alien in its nature that we can't understand it or its motives.
Mm.
And it's also heavily implied to be sentient as well, too.
Wouldn't Pumpkinhead be considered pure evil?
Yes. That's the thing that just hunts and slays people around Halloween, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what his reasonings are. Maybe he needs that to survive. But once again, we're running on the line of some of the other ones where it's hunger versus evil. And pure evil, they don't have. They're doing it because they want to, not because they have to. And I think that's a very important distinction.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Yes, would be definitely fall under that category. What are some other villains you think that would just truly fall under this situation?
Now, well, we already touched on Skeletor, who's basically a parody of evil.
Yes, it's a good one. I don't care what anybody says. That new stuff that they made was great.
Yeah,
I loved Revelations.
and I've actually seen countless people watch the first half. This is dumb. Second half comes out. Okay, but you may have knew what you were doing.
Right. So
Blade.
Teen Titans.
I don't know his story, so I don't know. Does he fall under that? Why is he the way he is?
I don't know.
Wow, we are just full of
I thought
insight
he
and
was
wisdom
just-
on this show.
I thought he was just evil.
But we don't know. We're shown one side of it from the Teen Titans perspective.
Yep.
It all goes back to what is the reason they're doing what they're doing. So melodrama plays well in fantasy and even more so in role playing games, right?
Yep.
And a few villains do melodrama as well as those brewed from pure concentrated evil. I think spirits fall into that in some capacity too.
Like evil and Time Bandits, who actually is the villain.
Yes. Players can hate the villain without guilt.
Yep.
And this is important to have these occasionally because it can be taxing for the players to constantly have to deal with, but it's not really a bad person. It's just they're in a situation that they don't have a choice.
Because there is something at times where it's just fun at the end of the day to have something just to be evil purge on sight.
Yes.
Hate the villain, not the game.
That's funny. And I think that, we most D&D adventures, end with the characters killing and slaying the villain. Everyone can feel good about striking a lethal blow against
Yay.
these fiends. Darth Vader, before anything was known about his life as Anakin,
That's a-
was one of these examples.
Yep.
Because until we knew his backstory, he was just outright a bastard.
Yep.
He's evil. And there was no other way to take it. He literally follows the dark side. But it wasn't until his backstory was revealed that he didn't start out that way. He became it. So that's a really good callback to when we talked about the progression of a
Yep.
character to evil, right?
And the Clone Wars TV series did a much better job of showing that than the movies.
Yeah, which is a shame. If you haven't seen those, you need to.
They're great.
So
I wonder about Palpatine. Did he become evil, or was he just?
I don't know. He didn't.
I don't know anymore. They keep changing the canon.
Yeah, and some of Disney's really screwed it all up. So who knows?
Way to go, Mouse.
All right, I think. Is there any other points you guys want to touch on this? Because I think these 3 points alone are super valuable to discerning. Because even just thinking about it in the discussions that we've had,
Yep.
we've got a lot of different variety of villains to discuss.
I think mindless evil could be one.
Yep.
Like someone had brought up zombies, that they're not evil because they want to be or because they can be. They don't know what they're doing.
It's just what they are.
Yes.
Shit, maybe that just falls under hunger.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yes.
Depends
They're
on-
not evil. They're just trying to eat to survive.
Depends
So
on what kind of zombies we're
maybe
talking.
they don't know that they'll not
World
die
War
if they
Z
don't eat
zombies?
anything.
Or Night of the Living Dead zombies. Which ones?
Or the zombies.
Ed is saying 5e is stripping the game of reliable villains. Yanti can be good now. Okay, why is that stripping away anything? I disagree with you.
Yep.
Like by so far, get creative. They're just not writing the lore and flavor for you anymore, which I guess is kind of the point. So that is kind of a bit of a letdown. I'll tell you about my beholders. Beholders.
Yep.
Those are pure, unadulterated evil creatures.
They were.
But
You can go up to Xanathar and give him a high five.
at a cost. But anyway, so that's a good example. Now we've got an entire character who basically runs underneath this, what was Waterdeep, right?
Yep.
And runs this cult and everything. So that's more interesting than him just roaming around killing people, I think.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the reason they're doing that.
And that's how we end up with the whole Rezo situation.
Yeah. Also,
Inside joke.
beholders reproduce by dreaming.
Yep.
Do you know that?
Yep.
Beholders reproduce by dreaming.
Yep.
No, what the hell?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Go ahead. Go. I knew it was going to squeak.
Squeak.
Yeah, they have nightmares about themselves, I guess, and then it's just how bad they hate other ones, and they just kind of spew out new ones.
And it manifests a new beholder because that's how their magic works.
All right, so there's one more thing that we want to talk about before we move on from our main topic, and that's further variety. So what follows is a kind of an overview of things to consider to ensure that your villains have lots of variety. The first one is monster type. Holy goodness, hadn't thought about this. So let's think about it. Just the monster type of the villain can be interesting. So at a glance, let's talk about the ooze. At a glance, the deck appears stacked against a creature ever taking a lead role, right? It's a blob.
Yep.
But how do we know that their little intelligence scores don't conceal a thought process that's super complex? You just mentioned it specifically.
The
thing, right? That it's actually sentient, and it seems dumb because we just can't comprehend its alien thought, right?
Yep.
We can't just comprehend it. So consider such creatures grown to enormous size and loosed in the city and the sewers, the blob, able to seep through any opening, to attack through any grate, any drain, to survive on whatever food it washes over.
You'll float too.
What do you guys think about that?
That's definitely a pretty interesting way to go. And as you're kind of touching on too, you can give it additional bits like telepathy.
Give it telepathy and tie it into the far realm?
Yep.
And
I would love to see an ooze be like a primary villain.
I think it would be so good. And so little things like that, when you think about your character's, your villain's theme, also consider just randomly picking a monster. Don't pick the monster first, because that's what I do.
Yep.
And it's horrible. I pick the monster and then try to make a story that fits that monster.
Right.
What vampire, right? That's a pretty generic one. They're hunters, right? But a news,
You're saying that they come across the big bad and you just
okay,
Manticore.
Yeah.
That's your big bad.
yeah, and then try to find a story suitable or out of the ordinary for that monster.
That would be a great way to do it,
Manticores
a
are
Bible story.
unique in the fact that they're just typically beasts.
Yep.
But maybe there's an abnormal one that's really giant that is storming through giant cities and knocking down buildings and fighting a giant flying, butterfly.
Or a troll that regrew a head that was actually intelligent.
Oh, that would be so cool. Can you imagine that having a troll that's just like, all right, listen, fellows, I'm not here to start a war. I am just really hungry. And then my primary diet consists of those grapes that grow in that farm. So I'm just asking, if you do not want me to bash your skull in with my giant stick, please just allow me to devour the delicious fruit.
And the other head is going, I sharpened a pencil with my bum, now I need a band-aid.
That's
That's an
not a
Atten.
troll, but that's an Atten, but that works too.
Although multi-headed trolls can be a thing too.
Damn right they can be. All right, I think that'll do it for our main topic today. Before we move on, we have to take a minute to hear a word from our sponsor,
Us.
us. We have released our Crit Academy map pack that is now available on DriveThruRPG. It is 12 hand-drawn maps by the amazing author Gene Lorber for only $9.99.
$9.99.
What's really cool is they're available for commercial use and come with a commercial license. So for all you publishing content creators out there, swing by and pick it up. You can pick it up over at rebrand.ly/crit map pack. Deal with the goofy look.
Crit map pack. I thought you were talking about my maps.
Oh,
Like,
no.
aren't those for
You're not.
patrons?
Yours aren't. Yeah, well, those ones too. I mean, yours aren't hand-drawn either.
Oh, he hand draws his.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. So please consider checking that out. It's less than $1 a piece, and you'll be supporting the show, and you get some fat loots for it.
Yep.
All right. So let's move on to our unearthed tips and tricks.
How big can
And now, what you've all been waiting for. Our Unearthed Tips and Tricks segment, where we bring you new and reusable material for both players and DMs.
All right. Now moving on to our first unearthed tips and tricks. Our monster. If you don't know, every week we do phenomenal monsters. Great. The stories and different ways you can use them for our patrons. If this tickles your dice, consider maybe becoming a patron. All right, today we're going to talk about the Aether Stone Miner. So in order to build on this CR2 monster, we're going to lose some different abilities. We're going to start with this Bandit stat block. If you're wondering why, somebody actually asked me one time why I use pre-existing monsters.
They're already made.
Because they're already made. And they're easier to balance. And on top of that, it's easier to tell you start with a stat block and make these changes than trying to feed you 20 stats.
Yep.
Anyways, so we're going to start with the Bandit Captain stat block. We're going to lose the Scimitar, parry, and we're going to swap Dex and Strength, right?
Yep.
Then we're going to give it the proficiency in the Persuasion skill, Dark Vision, and Devil's Sight. If you don't know, Devil's Sight lets you see in magical darkness.
Yep.
Now, we're also going to give it Dwarven Resilience because we want it to be it's an Aetherstone Miner. It's going to be a dwarf, right?
Yep.
And so now that we did that, last week we introduced a new mechanic we've been experimenting with. We gave the Resurgence, which means when a creature takes damage equal to or greater than the Resurgence, a new effect triggers automatically, no cost for reaction, nothing.
Yep.
It's just an effect. Ian, you want to tell us about the Resurgence power that our Aetherstone Miner gets?
Absolutely. This is a Resurgence 15 power, so that means if they take 15 or more damage, this comes into play. When the Miner takes damage from a single attack greater than its threshold, its flesh becomes as hard as stone. For up to a minute, as if concentrating on a spell, the Miner has immunity to piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. Additionally, the Miner gains vulnerability to thunder damage. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
What?
Okay, so before we get into that, we got to make some other changes here. We're gonna give it. We're gonna alter its spell. We're gonna give it spell casting.
Yep.
Brandon, do you want to tell us about some of the spell casting features we're gonna give it?
Spellcasting at will. It can mold earth. That's from Xanathar. It's got everything. 1 day each. It can meld into stone, shape stone, and those are the spells.
And we're gonna give it a war pick weapon, which I really added additional features on top of the 1d8 damage. It's going to target when it hits a creature that's concentrating on a spell. The creature has disadvantage on the con save. Ooh, that's brutal. And we're going to give it a really cool ability called Cutting Parry, since it's using a pick that's really curved. When a creature attacks the miner with a melee attack, it may use its reaction to catch the weapon in the hook of its war pick, parrying the target while the weapon is hooked, and then the war pick sinks into them. The miner makes an attack roll on the pick. If the result is equals or is higher than the attack roll of the attacker, it deals the weapon's normal damage.
Does that mean the attack is higher than the attacker's attack or higher than their damage?
Higher than the attacker's attack roll.
Okay.
So basically, you're going attack roll against attack roll, and whichever higher counters it. So this meant, and we basically giving it a chance to attack a second time.
Yep.
If the players don't figure this out, they're going to take way more damage if they don't retreat and attack from a distance.
Now you're saying when a creature attacks the miner, not when it hits them.
Yes.
Yes.
So if your attack is an 8,
the miner's gonna have a higher success chance.
Okay.
So what do you guys think about this?
Well, this seems to be really hard to kill, isn't it?
Yes. I want to just give a huge shout out to Andrew for totally appreciating that I gave it vulnerabilities.
Fair enough.
I love vulnerability, and there needs to be more of them. So I want to talk. I want to talk about the resurgence power.
Yep.
What did you guys think about that?
It reminds me of Bloodied from 4E.
Yeah.
That's exactly the inspiration, but it's based on the threshold mechanic and the boats in the book, which I think is interesting. So overall, this monster, his skin gets hard when he's fighting, making him very difficult in melee, and he can counter you with his hooked war pick during melee attacks. So what would you do as player characters?
Oh, thanks, Andrew. That's gruesome.
Yeah. That's Mortal Kombat crap there.
You can't use darkness.
Ha!
He's got double sights, so that's out of the question. Thunder Wave.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was that the weakness vulnerability it had, right?
Yeah, blood thunder damage.
Thunder damage. So as character players, we want to try to avoid melee.
Yep. And that's something the players can figure all that stuff out as they fight it.
Yes, and so we've been making kind of experimenting with design changes for our monsters, and something I think needs to be done more is resistances and vulnerabilities and tactics that force the players to change the way they normally do things. Because typically the barbarian's going to do what? Run in and charge and fight, right?
I rage.
But does it make sense that if you're fighting something that's going to counter parry every time you strike, to decide to step back and throw javelins instead?
Potentially, yeah.
It basically it rewards that sort of tactical play versus not doing that. So I really like this. And if it sounds good to you guys, you want to check it out. We're gonna have a backstory and different ways you can use it on our Patreon, fully fleshed out, or you can just grab the stats from this.
Yeah. Okay, so you know how this thing like counter strikes every time you attack it? Well, guess what? Grapple's not an attack.
I like that.
I can picture some rules lawyer going.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
By rules lawyer, I mean me.
Well, it says when it makes a melee attack. I think technically grapple is a special melee attack.
But you're not doing an attack roll, so
replace your attack.
You're right. All right, so that's a good point. I'm gonna have to rewrite that. Thank you for that.
If you throw them, is it considered an attack?
No, I don't. I wouldn't.
That's shutting.
I think they're talking about melee weapon attack, and he's not using a weapon anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Which I think is still appropriate, so maybe I won't change it. All right, let's move on to our encounter.
If you're a monk, they're weapon.
Lake of Acid.
Yeah.
Hanila, a small-town wizard, put out a call for adventurers. A rift to the Shadowfell has opened up near the town, causing a flood of necrotic creatures, spilling disease and poisons into the lake. The characters must purify the lake and deal with the black puddings that have spilled out of the rift.
They nasty.
The lake has several runoffs. And if the characters aren't able to control it, the putrid mess will spread to other towns. The characters must decide the priority.
Yep.
Slay the alien creatures first, heal the sick and dying, or quarantine off the lake's runoff streams before they reach more settlements.
Talk about being evil. God.
Each option will lead to a potential unpleasant disaster. It can only be controlled. The characters are damned if they do,
Yep.
damned if they don't.
See, what I like about this encounter is, let's be real here. There is no good option.
No, there's not, and that's the problem, right?
Yep.
And so, as players, how would you feel about running into an encounter like this?
Quarantining the outlets of the river would be the best thing to do.
Okay.
Because yeah, that would minimize the more potential victims down the line. So
And meanwhile, in the distance, you hear all of the crying and agony and suffering of everyone in town who's being plagued by this disease.
Wow, that
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
yeah,
You take inspiration where you can get it, I
They could have
guess.
quarantined it, but didn't happen.
But I think it's interesting because that obviously makes the most sense.
yeah.
But how is the player characters going to react when
There's no black pudding.
a young family is begging them to save them because they've got blotches all over them, they're coughing up blood, they're in agony and suffering, and they're screaming, "Save us! Save us! Save us!"
Give them a placebo. It's the best you're gonna do.
Yep.
Oh, we're gonna bring real life doctors into this, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you did. What about you, Ian?
Like I said, I like this encounter because there's just so many ways it can play out depending on which option they choose.
Yep, and that's kind of what I was going for here. So I'm glad you guys like it. We do have a question from Jade Gordon that says goes back to the mechanic of resurgence. Do you use different mechanic and when like when it deals damage? You certainly could. I put the trigger for damage because that's the one thing that's almost guaranteed to be part of a battle.
It's consistent.
But you could have triggers for like if somebody casts like a charm spell on them, redirects it or something. I don't know. I mean, those are definitely things you could do.
You go use charm, they pull out a mirror.
All right, Brandon. Would you like to tell us about our magic item today?
Our magic item, the ghost oil.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds sick.
It's YK. It's the best.
Yeah. Potion, rare. This dark ale smells of musty soil, but it has a hint of something rich and inviting, but turns into a soft blue flame when poured. Like you don't light it, like you just pour it out and...
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I think I wrote.
Yep.
I wrote it 2 weeks
The
ago, so
oil
I don't
can
remember.
cover a medium or smaller creature, along with the equipment it's wearing and carrying. That sounds
Ooh.
painful. The additional vial is required for each size category above medium. So you need more if you want to help other people bigger than you.
Right.
Applying the oil takes 10 minutes. The creature gains the following benefits for 1 hour.
Oh,
It can fly. The creature gains a fly speed equal to its walk speed, and it can hover.
nice.
Incorporeal movement. The creature can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. It takes 5 or 1d10 force damage if it ends its turn inside of something.
That's
Withering touch.
why it's called YK.
With oh my
Get it?
god.
Inside something.
Yes.
You're welcome.
When the creature makes an attack, it deals an additional 7 or 2d6 necrotic damage because it's got the oil on it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
This is a fun one.
It isn't it? Make sure you track that time because the last thing you want to do is be flying in the air when it runs out.
Or
1
inside
hour.
Or inside somebody.
Or something.
Like, I can totally imagine playing a character who's just running back and forth to get inside people and just to say, I've been inside all of you. Anyway, this is a pretty straightforward magic potion. Definitely fun.
It's our dream. They're making a South Park reference, and I got it.
Yep.
All right.
Crowley
William German says the last option is best as life lost from... he's talking about the encounter thing previously. All right, I think this is a simple potion, a fun magic item. Drop it in your games. The one thing I love about potions is they're one-time use, so if you make it super powerful, it's only going to be a problem for a session.
The problem though is when we make it one-time use, they're gonna do what every player does in video games. I'm gonna hoard this item and wait to use it until I really need it, and then never use it.
They'll hold it on forever, and then they empty their backpack at the end of the adventure. What's this? Oh, I was saving for a critical. Didn't you fight a dragon and it kill half your friends?
You have,
Well, yeah.
you have how many cheese wheels in here?
So what?
Nah, the magic on my idea. I don't want to forget it though.
Well, say it to the camera.
Say it to the camera.
Not that.
Camera. It.
I'm done with you.
You said
All right,
say it.
moving. No, shut up.
You can make puns, but I can't.
You got to make good ones.
But the worst ones are the best ones.
That's true too. All right, Ian, would you like to tell us about a Dungeon Master tip today?
Yes. And this is something I wholeheartedly agree with, despite what some people say online. And this comes from Monty Cook from Dungeon Magazine 136. Sometimes it's just the DM's fault.
You're not infallible, despite what you think with your almighty godlike powers.
Yep.
We make bad decisions.
Some of you regularly.
Yeah. The truth of it is, sometimes, when something's going wrong in the game, it's the DM's fault.
Yep.
Some things that DMs do are just plain wrong. We all make mistakes, and we all have our shortcomings. If you're a DM and you don't think you have some failings, you might want to re-examine your style and your approach. Or just ask your players. Everyone has a few things that they can improve on.
Yep.
Or phobias that they could just get rid of. But sometimes, particularly for DMs that have been DMing for a long time, we grow blind to our own deficiencies.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this. When I first started, I just thought I was the baddest thing to hit the other side of the screen, man. And I still feel that way, but I've learned a lot since then, so now I really believe it.
And then I showed up. No.
Oh, I hate you. What are some qualities you guys think you've had that you didn't know you had until a special event revealed it?
Yep. Well, one thing I got called out for was like I was running a module one time that didn't really say what happens if a player fails, other than they die. It's like, but I don't want them to die. I'm like, close enough. Which I even found out someone they rolled their check. And so afterwards, don't ever say close enough.
Right. What about you?
There was a moment when I was doing the haunt, and it was the first time that this happened, and I should have caught it as the DM, but I didn't.
Yep.
That is spoiler alert, by the way.
The haunt has been out forever. I think you're clear.
Just in case, you never know. There's some of those people that are just too poor to do it.
Yes.
If you haven't got the haunt, you need to check it out. It's great. By Phil Beckwith.
The story says that the foyer that goes to the basement and the second level unlocks if they explore 5 or more rooms on the first level.
I didn't know that, and I've run through that adventure a dozen times.
It says that. But here's the issue: is that if you go to the basement and they fail the puzzle in the basement, they end up right out. They don't get to explore the second floor.
That's the one. That's where they got the human like golem or something down there, right? All the little
Little feet and stuff you got to put together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first time someone failed that is when I realized this, because I was like, okay, so I put them right here, and well, wait, what about the rest of the house? What about the evil doll? They don't get to experience that stuff.
It's the best part.
Yeah.
And they went straight to the boss, and like, well, this was over like an hour and a half longer, or early before it was supposed to.
I'll tell you one of my greatest weaknesses, and I'll never ever admit to it again. So here it is on the internet for the world to see.
I was gonna say I don't have any. Watch,
I don't have any.
you bitch.
No, I purposefully changed a rule so that my match, my session, wouldn't end immediately. So the players are chasing down the big bad. They're in the temple. They're there to slay it's a water temple because I'm Zelda nut, and they're in there and they have to. I created a thing that controls the water flow, right? And the big bad is basically a sentient shark, right? And so they go to fight the boss.
Hello.
And the guy's like, "Can I just pull the lever and drain out all the water?" And I just looked at myself and was just like, if he does that, it only has a swim speed. I didn't give it a walk speed. It's a giant killer shark because, Jaws. And he's like, "I'll just drain out all the water." And I hadn't thought about that at all. And I was like, "Nope, doesn't work." And that was a terrible thing for me to do because I failed. What I should have did is said, "You know what? You're right," and just let it lower the water, catch the damn thing inside of the giant temple room, and let him slay it as it's flopping like a fish out of boat.
Because the moment that open jaw swings by and hits your character.
Yeah, and that was a
all it
huge
needs.
mistake on my part, and something that does happen regularly. But that was the moment where I realized I punished my players for outthinking me.
And that's actually a common thing I see among bad DMs.
Yeah.
Like,
Whoa, backtrack. You just implied that I'm a bad DM, and I don't think I. I'm just kidding.
did I name your name? I don't think so.
I felt disturbance in the dice.
Okay. Well, I did have a good. I can name a few examples I've been through, but one that was that went around a Facebook group for a while was a guy posted, and he took a lot of flack for this, and rightfully so, where he's like, the fighter drank a potion of fire and vulnerability. Discovers it does not work on his armor, and his armor melts and the dragon breathes fire on him. And I was like, that's stupid.
That's dumb.
That's very anti-player.
Good. I hope he got burned.
And worse, he doubled down.
What do you do?
Get, well, this is how I run my games. that whole
That's a whole BS.
yeah.
Yeah. So don't do that. I
Yeah.
did that, and I realized it later that it was a problem.
And
Andrew.
actually, the one time I recall in the game I was in where the players revolted so hard against the DM was when we all basically got hit by that game's. This was Dragon Age, not D&D, mind you.
But,
Like
yeah.
that game's equivalent of a fireball. He then said, "Everything I need that's flammable, that's not magical, is now destroyed."
Douche.
Okay. Oh, the players it did not go over well.
I bet.
And it included the bowstring on my magical bow. I was an archer.
You can still throw your bow.
I'll tell you a win I did as a DM. The
Yep.
players found a used magic bag of holding.
Oh yeah.
And as you guys have heard before, I think I said it once, as a used magic bag of holding is when you put stuff in it, when you take it out, it's covered in glitter because it's used. That's how all these things work. And like, how much glitter's in there? It's like enough to cover stuff. It's like, if we leave it empty and it says when you flip it inside out, all the contents spew out, can we use that as a weapon? It's like, you know what? Just for that, yes.
Too much.
It's like next
No,
time
it's
you
fine.
you see an enemy, if there's
need
nothing in the
well-
bag, if you flip it inside out, I'll put them under the blind condition for one
Yeah.
round.
But
Oh.
I do want to go over some of the examples that we have listed here, too.
I
though.
forgot there was examples. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Is there one specifically you want to talk about?
Well,
How about?
scroll past a couple of them?
Oh, sorry. That was my bad.
Yep. Like,
All right.
like the first and foremost most example was when you start the game at 7, with a schedule for 6 p.m. That tells me that you're not respecting your player's time.
Yes. What are you looking at me for?
Okay. And actually, this,
sometimes it's not our fault. I mean, we
It
get
depends on how
out of-
often you do it.
out of work late or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. and actually one mistake I think many teams can make is if you don't respect the player's time. And that's a lot of ways it can take form, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And okay, who wants the next one?
If you fail to take challenges seriously, the players may believe you'll never let anything happen to them.
Yep.
I know for a fact that my players know that their characters are not going to be saved by me. I'm sure both of these players have lost a character.
Yes.
You got out of jail free because at a high level, it's just an inconvenience to be dead.
Yeah.
You killed yourself more than once.
I killed myself more than once.
All right. And
Yeah.
one is the players are distracted by TV or other things. You might be boring them.
Ugh.
Yeah. I don't consider that a problem.
Yeah. Because I've heard like a bunch of like DMs complain about how I hate when I play on my phone. It's like, some people like to multitask.
Yeah, and who cares? I mean, it's a community social game, and the intention's not always on them.
Yep. And sometimes I know I can get distracted easily, so I might focus on one other thing at the same time
Yeah.
to keep it focused.
Let's talk about the minimum hygiene requirement, Brandon.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie about that. Well, first off, I'm not gonna drop
That's just-
names because my players know that I do this, so they might be watching now.
One of y'all stink.
One
Shower.
of you
Put
smell-
on some deodorant.
Smelled like ass when he came by at one point, and it was very distracting the whole game.
Yes, it's
So make sure you're washing yourself.
that's a thing with nerdy guys.
Get-
Shower.
So it's not just a DM thing; it's a player thing too.
Yes, that goes both
That's
ways.
everything.
Yeah.
But I hope that the DM is showered when everyone shows up. But don't you
Yep.
come in my room and stink on my house.
Yep. And then another one is if your players just aren't interested in your story or your campaign arc.
Yeah, maybe that's your fault.
Yep.
It's 100% your fault. It's our job as the DM to engage the players.
Yep.
And if you think it's all about your story and they're not having fun, you're wrong.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
Okay, so
Or players who aren't sure what to do next.
now, okay, this will connect back to that first one.
Oh, okay. Yes. What is it?
I'm gonna
Eat my ass. That's what you're gonna do.
the distracted TV. If you're the player that's distracted all the time and I got to repeat myself,
That's different.
That's different than being distracted and still know what's going on.
Right.
Let's get that out there.
So wait, where'd the gold go? It's like you should have been paying attention.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly okay to just go swing right by you. But I also forget a lot, even when I am paying attention. So you got to kind of find a
Yeah.
happy ground. Like I hope I would never be punished for forgetting as much crap as I forget. Like, what are we doing again?
Or as we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier too, if you punish players for doing a good job.
Yes, like I did.
Like there's one time too where we solved a DM's puzzle right away, and he intended to last about 15, 20 minutes, so he kept on stonewalling us, even though we solved
Oh,
it.
I hate that. And honestly, I've done that.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was playing 4E where I would spend a lot of time building these intricate scenes and stuff.
Yep.
Your players are like, nope.
And sometimes they would just bypass my puzzle. And inside, I'm screaming because I spent so much time building this thing. Not just the puzzle, but like the actual like gizmo that they're playing with the little and
Yep.
and I have stonewalled them. And I've learned that's that's another reason why I love 5th edition and Theater of the Mind, because no longer do I feel like I have to push them down a way of something I've designed.
Yep. I recall there was one game of Pathfinder where we found out the dungeon was actually 3 sub-levels underneath a mansion. I'm like, wait, so we know it's 3 sub-levels, right? Yeah, why? Shape stone, jump down to the next floor, shape stone, so you down to the next floor, shape stone, down to the next floor.
See, that's the stuff we need to be rewarding as DMs all the time. All right, we've been on this long enough.
Yep.
That'll do it for our Dungeon Master tip. Let's move on to our player tip of the podcast. Don't be a dick. And you can avoid dickitude by educating yourself on the favored of the All-Father. Favored of the All-Father. Dwarves know Moradin as the All-Father because he crafted all dwarves from stone.
Yep.
Yet, Moradin has made many things in his immortal lifetime. This is interesting.
Yep.
Some were stronger, some were more beautiful, but none found so much favor in Moradin's bejeweled heart as his dwarves. The dwarves were the first of Moradin's makings that made him proud, not only at his own skill, but proud to know them, and prouder still that they prayed to him. Dwarfs honor their creator through prayer, but also through proud traditions, knowledge and customs passed down through generations, almost unchanged from the Dawn Age. Passed down from the Dawn Age, guide dwarves through uncertain present and into the unknowable future with confidence that what has been will be. I don't know if I wrote that wrong or what. The past lives on in the present through the deeds of honorable dwarves. So shall it always be as long as any favored of the All-Father draw breath. This was written for Dragon Magazine 391 by Matt Sarnett. And I really think this is interesting because we know that dwarves like drinking. We know they hate elves. But what are their other favors and cultures and traditions that they do
Sartain, you smartass.
that really exhibit their creator?
Well, as we established here, they view Morton here as the All-Father who's the maker, and, well, dwarves make things.
Yes. And apparently Sartrein wants to know, wait, dwarves are crafted from stone. Can you use stone shape on them?
No.
They started off that way. They don't stay that way.
No.
What about you? What do you think about this? So this tip's a little different than what we normally do. I want to start giving player tips to help players connect to their class history and lore and their race lore and stuff as well. If you don't like this, let me know.
And not enough players or DMs do that, in my opinion. And people do forget that there is a lore associated with the game, and admittedly, I do think that the publisher could do a better job of communicating some of that lore. But
they did in 4th edition, and nobody liked it. That's one thing I don't care what anybody says. One thing 4th edition did, I think their guidebooks are some of the best that exist.
Although it's worth mentioning, though, that a lot of that was because they changed a lot of the lore, too. So,
That's where this comes from. So if you don't like it,
yeah,
change it, which is everyone does. But I like Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
I love Ed Greenwood's writing. And a lot of that was, I don't know if you guys know, but in the magazine, the Dragon and Dungeon magazine, there's a lot of articles written by Ed Greenwood in there. So there's stuff that he wrote for the canon, and I love it. What do you think about this?
I like it specifically because I don't know jack about lore in Faerun.
Yep, and
Anything.
So apparently it's the same with a lot of people in chat too. They want more 5e lore.
Yep. Well, we're gonna try to feed it to you as players through our player tips as well, because we've done the etiquette, we've done the optimization.
Yep.
Lore isn't exactly something we've done a lot of, and I want to kind of expand on that because there's a lot.
And as Delcina pointed out, Mr. Rex's channel does a very good job of that on YouTube. So
Who?
Mr. Rex.
Why are we sending other people to other places? No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Yes.
what's the whole thing? So
Mr. X does really good work. Go watch him after you watch all of our episodes.
Yes,
It's like
after.
like the Githyanki. When we did the episode on that, I know what those were. I realized they're actual sea pirates. Like, that's pretty badass.
Space Pirates.
Yep.
Yes.
Astral Sea Pirates, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
So, this one is all about the favored of the Allfather. So when you're playing your dwarf, consider what is a ritual. Even talk to your DM and say, hey, I want this ritual to be something that's been passed down to worship Moradin. Can I do that? You can even make up your own. Maybe it's something as simple as knocking on a door 3 times.
Yep.
Nobody?
Knock, 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 knock on wood.
Nobody at all. Okay. Thank you. If anybody's watched Big Bang, Sheldon always knocks on the doors.
Penny.
And Penny. Anyways, so coming up with something like that's really cool. I can do this before he starts working on something, pounding on a hammer. Morden. All right. That'll do it for our player tip of the podcast. Don't be a dick. And you can avoid dickitude by remembering the favored of the Allfather. So, as always,
I'm not picturing George Smith. I think he swings a hammer. Morden. Morden.
So, as always, before we close out, we love to give away fat loots to our audience. Brandon, what RPG fat loot giveaway do we have in store for our fans today?
Our RPG Fat Loot giveaway for this week is Villains Next Door. That sounds like a bad...
Like dirty?
Yes. Villains create conflict. Conflict creates the call to action every story needs. Short story. Without a villain, there's no story. Villains Next Door is a collection of bad guys for fantasy games. Huh. The book contains dozens of ready-to-use villains.
Yes.
Each unique and fully realized.
Yeah.
Though created with 5th edition in mind, each villain is designed to be used in any RPG system.
Yeah.
Kabutor?
Yep, Kabooter.
Kabooter?
Which is like goblins. Did you know
Kabooter.
that? I had to
No,
Google it.
I had no idea. Kabooter Games assembled a crack team
Makes you
of
laugh.
diverse international indie designers to create Villains Next Door just for you.
Yes, I really love this product. The person that designed it, R.P. Davis, is an amazing writer in D&D. He does a lot of great content. Some of my favorite content's by him, and I know we've covered some of his stuff on the show.
Yeah, I heard his name pop up a lot.
Yeah, and he's edited work for us and stuff, so he's really great. Definitely check this out. Who's our winner today?
Our winner today is DM Tumultuous.
Woo! Yeah. Congratulations. If you didn't win, head on over to critacademy.com and subscribe for your chance to win. Yeah!
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this show and you want to support us, visit us at critacademy.com. And follow us on social media, and please, leave us a review.
Absolutely. Well, I think that'll do it for our show. I do want to take a moment to appreciate Sartran's comment. Sheldon as a dwarven artificer would be so fun. I could not agree more. Somebody that just doesn't get the social cues and stuff is just hilarious and insulting, and it would be wonderful.
Yep.
It wouldn't even be a bard who would normally do that sort of stuff. So.
A dwarf not understanding social cues from other cultures? No.
I do want to give a shout out if you're watching live from any other platform. We do encourage everyone to slowly make the move to YouTube. We have been monetized on YouTube, so everyone that watches helps support the show in a monetary
Give me money, give me money, give me money. Give
a
me money.
monetary form. So, and all you're doing is watching, which you're already doing. So, all right,
Street says congratulations for the 100 messages that happened today.
that's just a restream thing.
Oh,
All right,
Oh well.
that'll do it for our show today. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your host, Ian.
I'm your co-host Brandon. Thanks for
You
listening.
guys ready? Keep your blades sharp and spells prepared, heroes.